Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, inspiring young girls one badge at a time. The Girl Scout troops in San Diego helping them preserve their culture, and the women who are leading by example.
It's like just the thought of us really keeps her going and stuff, and I just want to pick that up from her, that strength.
And why is Assembly Speaker Toni Atkins challenging incumbent Marty for his Senate seat? I'm Peggy Pico with analysis of the unusual political move. Also ahead, Father Junipero Serra, who founded California's first mission in San Diego, will be canonized by the Pope tomorrow. What got him sainthood and why critics say he shouldn't be?
Neither side can use this Pope for political advantage.
Happening now, the first U.S. tour for Pope Francis. The rare honor just moments after his plane touched down, and the hype building for his historic address on Capitol Hill. KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Dwayne Brown is off. I'm Maya Trabulsi. You've seen the traditional Girl Scout uniforms and badges. San Diego troops are also sporting patches embroidered with the faces of United Farm Workers founders. KPBS reporter Megan Burke says these troops reflect the region's changing demographics.
It's Monday evening in City Heights, and Girl Scout Troop 4307 is gathering. But instead of green and brown uniforms, the girls are wearing a rainbow of color. When it's time for the Girl Scout salute, they raise 3 fingers to foreheads covered in jewel-toned hijabs. It's estimated 30,000 East Africans live in San Diego, many of them in City Heights. The Girl Scout Troop is just one example of how refugee families are tailoring U.S. customs for their mostly American-born children. At tonight's troop meeting, henna and learning about East African countries.
We try to get them prepared, not only for them to preserve their culture, but also to prepare them for the mainstream culture.
Bethlehem Degu is the troop leader. She says the specialized troop started because girls in her community wanted to join, but their parents weren't so sure. They thought maybe their daughters had to be a certain religion or would be off camping all the time.
If their parents are always too scared to, have them join this program or join that program because it's not culturally competent, they don't know, they don't have someone, translating to them and telling them or helping them fill out the forms, then these girls will never get that experience that those other girls do.
But by using a translator, the program's message was something the parents could all get behind.
Just sisterhood and respect, and Girl Scouts is all about confidence, like building the girls' confidence up, and so all of the things that comes with the Girl Scouts, but at the same time having pride in their culture and pride in who they are as well.
Here in San Diego, we have 25,000 girls, and many of them are served through troops, traditional troops that most Americans know about, but some of them are specialty troops or common interest troops. For example, in Mira Mesa, we have an all-Vietnamese Girl Scout troop.
There are also Spanish language troops and special interest troops for girls who like science or golf. Jacob says such acceptance falls right in line with what the Girl Scouts founder envisioned.
And Juliet Lowe was a very, very progressive woman. Back in 1912, women didn't have the vote. They couldn't wear pantaloons. They were certainly not expected to be athletes.
For Troop 4307, there's no limit on ambition.
And you?
I want to be 6 things. I want to be a ballerina teacher, a gymnastics teacher, an orthodontist, a dentist, and a talent show teacher, and a singer.
At another troop meeting, the girls hear from female role models Shiona Som of nonprofit Women Give San Diego and postdoctoral student Anandita Dasgupta.
Does anybody have an idea of when they would what age they would like to get married?
30.
30? Why 30?
Because you're going to be busy with school and stuff.
Excellent.
But also role models are the very women who got the Girl Scout troop started. The United Women of East Africa support team is made up of refugee mothers who got their start just trying to make things better for their kids. They've also negotiated women-only pool hours at the YMCA so their Muslim daughters could learn to swim. And they fought for school lunches that meet their children's religious guidelines. Now the women provide cultural competency training and educate their community about health health and business.
haddii anigu aan strong aan ahay qof adag ilmahaygu way fiirinayaan wayna ila joogaan moogtahay.
My mom is hardcore. Like most of these moms are really hardcore, but like my mom is really hardcore.
Hassan's daughter and Girl Scout senior Fatima Haji seems to have noticed.
She has so many things going against her, you know, like the English is not her first language. This is not her country, you know. When I went over to her country, I felt so out of place, and I was thinking, you know, how could she do all these things, come to these events, do all this stuff, like, and she doesn't think about it at all. It's like just the thought of us really keeps her going and stuff, and I just want to pick that up from her, that strength.
Strength that will let her fulfill the Girl Scout promise to serve her country and help people at all times. Megan Burks, KPBS News.
Media Arts Center videographer Brian Myers helped produce that story. A historic papal visit on American soil. Pope Francis is now in Washington, D.C. He will canonize Catholic missionary Junipero Serra tomorrow in Washington, D.C. This makes Serra the first saint canonized on U.S. soil and the first Latino American saint. He founded the Mission de Alcalá that's located in what's now Mission Valley. Peggy Pico explains why his sainthood is controversial.
Junipero Serra, a Spanish Franciscan friar, founded the first California mission in San Diego in 1769. The Kumeyaay Indians, who lived in San Diego at the time, burned the mission down. And today, critics say the friar's mistreatment of Native Americans should preclude him from sainthood. Joining me to talk about Serra's legacy in San Diego is Katja Risling-Baldi, assistant professor of American Indian Studies at San Diego State University. And Katja, what was San Diego like when Serra arrived here back in the 1700s?
You know, I mean, California Indian peoples, they say they come from the place that they're from, and so it was a very complex, dynamic group of people and society. You're talking about you know, large areas of people living here, and they're doing everything that anybody would do in a culture and society. They have law and politics and religion, they have dances, they have gatherings, they have marriage, they have families. So I think, you know, when you're thinking about San Diego as a place, it has always been a place that people have wanted to live and have lived here and done lots of things with it.
So back then, the people who already lived here, the Kumeyaay, how did they respond to the Spaniards' arrival?
It was very interesting. The Kumeyaay actually responded very succinctly. Like, they set up the mission and automatically they start, you know, resisting the mission. So when Serra first gets here, he comments that there's not very many Indian people that are coming to the mission saying, I would like to live here, I would like to convert. And for a whole year, they don't come around, and he has to figure out ways to bring them in. And then once they get brought in, they lead revolts and rebellions against the mission institution. They set it on fire, they tear it down, they poison one of the padres. So their resistance from the beginning was always about that they were a very strong people, and they didn't want sort of people coming in trying to tell them how they were supposed to be in their own territory.
Well, as you know, there's controversy over Junipero Serra's sainthood because of his treatment of Native Americans back in the 1700s, and the missionaries essentially ending the way of life, the culture that was here before. What does history tell us about how Serra treated the Kumeyaay that were here, or other Native Americans that were here?
I think it's different. I think what we learn in school about Junipero Serra is one very particular story, which is that he brought Catholicism and conversion, and he brought agriculture. And I think that when you really start to do the research, when you hear the stories, when you really start to look at the records, what you see is that what he really brought was trying to completely upend and destroy the culture and society in the name of the church, but also because the church was trying to colonize the territory. They're trying to become the owners of the land. And one way to do that is to take in the peoples and to make them into new peoples that then will let you have the land.
Which was the practice in the 1700s by Spaniards taking over various land. Yes. Are there any examples, I think you touched on his work benefiting Native Americans here in our region? You
know, I think when you get any system that comes into contact with another system, you're going to see sort of exchanges of ideas and like the way that things should be run. I think that in an individual level, there were people who married to like each other. So there's like Spanish soldiers who are marrying Indian people. I think that there, you know, on an individual basis, sure, there was some exchange and interaction.
And growth in agriculture, I think you mentioned.
There actually, I mean, there's been research that shows that California Indian people were very adept at agriculture, at taking care of their territories. And so what you're actually talking about is them coming in and saying, we have this type of agriculture, and California Indians saying, well, we have this type, and this works for our territory and land. So there was an exchange of ideas there. But I think that what happens when they come into the mission system is they don't really want that. But California Indians are still open to learning from the people that are coming in.
Back then.
Yes.
Let's talk about this. Despite the tactics toward Native Americans by the Spanish, many present-day Native Americans are actually Catholic. So how does this complicate the issue when we're talking about canonizing Junipero Serra?
I think it just shows that, California people are very diverse, and that they have a lot of ways that they have approached what has happened here on this place, that they have been able to find in the Catholic faith and religion ideas that I think run throughout religions and spiritualities. I think that it also shows that, we still have a complicated conversation to have about Junipero Serra.
And let's talk about that, because back in July, Pope Francis actually apologized to the indigenous people for offenses caused by the Catholic Church during the colonial era. How does this making him a saint, is that some sort of contradiction, or how is that message from the Pope being received?
To me, it's an incredible contradiction. It's sort of a sorry, not sorry, because we're able to kind of ignore the other part of this conversation, which is that Serra is really about colonization and colonialism and settling this area, an area that wasn't sort of open for business. He was coming here and having to do things in order to make sure that the Indian people weren't going to be able to kind of take the land and keep it for themselves. So to me, the Pope then at that point, you're kind of saying, well, I understand that you want to have one conversation, but you don't want to have the other one because you're not quite ready to take apart all of that system.
All right. Katja Reslan-Baldi, thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you.
The popular pontiff is bringing his so-called Church of the Poor to the heart of the world's wealthiest superpower. It's a visit marked by many firsts. His public addresses may ruffle bipartisan feathers as he shines a light on issues closest to his heart: immigration, social injustice, and economic inequality. Francis has arrived in the United States to a very warm welcome. He landed at Andrews Air Force Base after a flight from Cuba, where he wrapped a 4-day visit. The pontiff was personally met by President Obama and the First Lady. The White House says the personal welcome is a symbol of the high level of respect that Americans have for the Pope. They will meet again at the White House tomorrow. A day later, the pontiff will address Congress, and he will be the first pope to do so. His speech is highly anticipated because of the potential to incite bipartisan tension.
Neither side can use this pope for political advantage. I'm really expecting this pope to try to call us out of our narrow little squabbles.
The Pope saw a drop in his approval rating after his criticism of capitalism and calling global warming a largely man-made issue.
Well, the encyclical was broader than just the environment. It was basically about stewardship of what God has given us. Look, there is no one who wants the earth to turn into a trash heap.
Tension also mounts over the Vatican's agreement on the Iran nuclear deal.
I would be, happy if the Pope, was on the same side here and saw it the same way, the Iran agreement. But the most important thing to me is to listen to understand what he's saying.
The Pope will also address the United Nations and take part in a Vatican-sponsored conference on families in Philadelphia. And when Pope Francis addresses Congress on Thursday, some San Diegans will be watching from a special seat on the lawn of the U.S. Capitol. They won tickets from Representative Susan Davis's office, who, like all House members, was given 50 tickets for the event. KPBS culture reporter Angela Carone checks in with two of the winners.
San Diegan Donna Palm has her suitcase out and is ready to go. The former Benedictine nun says she wouldn't fly across the country for past popes.
I wouldn't walk across the street for most of them, but this fellow is really intriguing.
Palm was a nun for most of her adult life and says religious women have done a lot for the Catholic Church.
Built their schools, ran their schools, educated the children, brought them into sacraments, raised little priests and little nuns.
She believes Pope Francis will help heal recent friction between the Vatican and nuns.
The quality of gentleness and spirituality in him I haven't seen in this church leadership in a long time.
The Pope's address will be on jumbotrons set up on the west lawn of the Capitol. Pope Francis is scheduled to come out on a balcony after and bless the crowd. San Diegan Rosa Hernandez is taking a memento to have blessed.
This is a book. It's called the Book of El Santo Rosario of Rosary. So this is something that's been in the family for, I would say, over, 60 years.
Her parents were born in Mexico and raised 5 daughters in the church. As a Latina and self-described progressive Catholic, Hernandez feels this is her pope.
It's an amazing experience having someone that you feel connected to be representing you in some sort of way.
She says the mementos will remind her of her parents as she experiences this historic moment.
My parents are very excited. They're a little bit sad that they won't be able to come with me, but they're living vicariously through me.
Angela Carone, KPBS News.
Our coverage on the Pope's first visit to the U.S. continues online at kpbs.org. We plan on carrying his historic address to Congress. That will be live Thursday on KPBS Radio. Mayor Kevin Faulconer is applauding Governor Brown for signing a bill that will streamline the state process for abolishing redevelopment agencies. The mayor says the signing of SB 107 will return $64 million in funding to San Diego. It will also increase funding for affordable housing. The City Council confirmed the new chief of the San Diego Fire Rescue Department. Council member Todd Gloria tweeted this photo from today's meeting. Brian Fennessy will be the 17th chief of the department. Mayor Kevin Faulconer says he looks forward to the new chief building new fire stations and increasing racial and gender diversity within the ranks. Making sure no one is left behind on Election Day. Volunteers fanned out across the county today for National Voter Registration Day. It's also Hispanic Heritage Month, so the focus was on getting Latinos to register. The registrar's Latino Outreach Coordinator says language barriers and transiency due to renting keep many from registering.
We have a lot of work to do of getting people to vote consistently. Our population is 11 years younger than the Anglo-Saxon median age.
A record number of Latinos registered before the last presidential election, but turnout was about 10 percentage points lower than turnout citywide. A statewide plan to reduce highway fatalities was launched today by a coalition of highway safety officials. Supporters say the new effort will help develop better solutions to help save lives and prevent severe injuries. Under the original plan, there was a 30% reduction in roadway fatalities. More than 10,000 people are severely injured on California roadways each year.
One of the things that we've found is safety has to be something that you continually work on. We tend to get into our routines and our habits, and so it's needing that vigilance of making sure that we create and put a high value on realizing that each time we get in a car, each time we get on a bike, of being able to understand that the most important thing that we do is that we get there safe.
The National Highway Safety Administration says traffic crashes cost California more than $22 billion each year. Hacking for a cause. SDSU is calling on all programming whizzes and storytellers for its first ever Big Data Hackathon. It's a competition using open source databases to solve real life issues in San Diego. Teams with the best proposals will be awarded prizes. The hackathon happens next month, is free and open to both students and community members. Stocks of specialty drugs dropped sharply after Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton said she'll be releasing a plan to address the problem of price gouging in the pharmaceutical industry. Her announcement was made on Twitter after Turing Pharmaceuticals hiked the price of an HIV drug from less than $14 to $750 overnight. The more than 5,000% hike of Daraprim sparked outrage from medical groups who care for patients with HIV. The race between California Assembly Speaker Toni Atkins and State Senator Marty Block may have local and statewide implications. Peggy Pico takes a closer look.
The two Democrats are battling over a securely Democratic state Senate seat, and the race could extend to the November election. Joining me with what this race means for the Democratic Party in San Diego and beyond are political science professors Thad Kauser from UC San Diego and Carl Luna of Mesa College. And Thad, now Toni Atkins will term out of the Assembly at the end of this year. Is she breaking any rules by running against fellow Democrat and incumbent Marty Block?
Well, Ronald Reagan called this the 11th commandment, thou shalt not attack your own party, but even he broke it when he ran against Gerald Ford in 1976. So no, no one owns a seat, and there's no commandment against an in-party challenge. This happens every so often, but it does bring a lot of internal strife within the party and brings unwanted attention and too much money going to something that's only not going to change the partisan balance in the state.
Because in this particular case, Marty Block looks like he was going to get that Senate seat anyway.
It's a strongly Democratic seat. It's just a question of which of these two moderate to liberal Democrats would be representing that area.
So when it comes to policies then, in these moderate Democratic Democrats, how different are they?
Not very different. They'll probably vote the same way on just about every bill. Now, Marty Block has a reputation of being a leader on higher education issues, Toni Atkins on a lot of LGBT issues, and so they'll have different emphasis, but really you're getting the same type of senator no matter who wins this race.
Now, Carl, do you agree with that? Do you think this is an unusual race and you think you're getting kind of two of the same?
Yeah, totally. If you take a look at it, you've only had like 3 cases where an assemblyman's taken on a senator from their own party and they lost each time. You had a state assembly speaker take on the governor back in the 60s, Governor Pat Brown, and he lost. So, yeah, this doesn't usually happen unless it's a challenge on ideological reasons. It's like from the right or the left attacking a more centrist. And as Thad said, there's not a lot of daylight between both Marty Block and Toni Atkins' positions.
Carl, what kind of short-term effect do you think this could have on the liberal politics here in San Diego?
Well, it hurts San Diego in that if Marty Block gets replaced, you lose seniority in the Senate for 4 years, and eventually you recapture it, 4 years from now. It means that still no one is going to run for mayor in San Diego, in a city that is moving progressively purple to blue in a presidential year when there should be a big Democratic turnout. There's no real reason locally for Democrats to turn out other than the city attorney's race. You're going to spend a lot of money on something that you already own. So it's kind of like rebuying something that you sold off at an auction, and that doesn't make a lot of sense. And it could damage Toni Atkins. Even if she wins this seat, it could haunt her if she wants to run for statewide office later on.
So let's talk about that a little bit, Thad. So first of all, going back to the mayor's seat, was there an issue with why? Do we know why Toni doesn't want to run for this seat, and what sort of jeopardy does this put the seat in?
Well, I think the reason that no one on the Democratic side is stepping up to run for this mayor race, no Todd Gloria, no Toni Atkins, is because right now they don't think they can win it. They see a mayor who's fairly popular, hasn't had enough time to make any mistakes or enemies, has done some good things and is still riding high in the polls, has a lot of money. But that seems to, I agree with Carl, that there's a lack of political imagination, that a year from now, in a high-water Democratic year, they can't win that seat. They can't get a top competitor for one of the plummest prizes, mayorship of the second biggest city in California. That is surprising.
Well, let's talk about this, because this isn't the only place in town where there's an inter-party fight going on. In Northern California, the 17th Congressional District, they're also having a similar situation. So what's going on there, and does this point to a larger problem in the Democratic Party?
Well, so this seat in Northern California, where incumbent Mike Honda is running again against insurgent Ro Khanna, who does represent a different constituency, more of the new tech money in the Silicon Valley. That fight and this fight are symptoms of where we are as a state. We're becoming an increasingly blue state, and that means most of the big fights are not between the two parties. We just saw a governor's race that was basically uncontested. We're about to see a U.S. Senate race that will almost be uncontested. The fights are within the party, within that blue party, to see whose political ambitions will be served.
And coming back to that note, Carl, given the election rules, the two top vote getters will move on to the general election. So this means that Atkins and Block could continue on to November spending money. How much money do these candidates, do you think, will need to spend to fight for this state Senate seat?
Well, Toni Atkins already has a war chest over $800,000, so you could be looking at her spending somewhere in the 7 figures. Marty Block, who wasn't anticipating spending that much, is going to have to raise that money. And in a world of limited money with a presidential race, every dollar that goes there is a dollar less to go to other races around the state and at the national level.
All right, I'm sure we'll be following this as we approach November. Carl Luna and Thad Kauser, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Gwen Eiffel on the next News Hour. As Francis arrives in the U.S., how his papacy has handled sexual abuse claims. That's Tuesday on the PBS News Hour.
It took emergency crews about an hour today to free a motorist trapped in her Jaguar. It started after an automated security gate came down on the car in Mission Valley. Firefighters cut the gate off the hood and windshield in order to get the driver out. Paramedics transported her to a hospital. They say she's going to be okay. Dogs brought to San Diego after being rescued from the meat trade in South Korea will be available for adoption on Thursday. There are 29 dogs available, and most of them are Mastiffs. The San Diego Humane Society says the canines are extremely shy and under-socialized and will need training and patience. The dogs are available on a first-come, first-served basis starting at 11. New duties for the San Diego Chargers made kids smile today. These students went back to school shoe shopping with their very own San Diego Charger. It was the 27th annual Bolts Back to School shoe distribution. Students from 17 elementary schools from all across the county participated.
Whether it's your favorite color, your favorite style, it just feels like a new haircut. It makes you feel like a new person once you put them on.
The Chargers helped give away more than 1,200 pairs of shoes this year. Things may be warming up in San Diego, a mix of sun and clouds by the beaches with 80s and 90s in the inland valleys, and it's clearing up in the mountains with 80s, 90s, and triple digits in the desert communities. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.